I might be one let's not meet person. So I'm currently focusing on taking care of myself, getting therapy, seeing a psychiatrist, etc. Over the past few years, especially since I have had very toxic relationships, I began noticing certain behavioral patterns I've always had. These didn't really bother me before, but they've started to affect my daily life. Since I was young, I felt a bit invisible at school. I remember that even though I did well academically and I had high grades, most teachers and students wouldn't remember my name and would act surprised when the rankings came out. Many teachers would read my name among the top 3 and ask, "Who is this?" One of the first things I remember doing, which seems strange looking back now, was becoming obsessed with this girl. She was a year ahead of me, Japanese, and seemed really shy. During lunch breaks, I would spend most of my time watching her, noticing who she hung out with, etc. Over time, my interest kept growing until one day I used the lunch break to go into her classroom and look through her things, just to find her name. I managed to do it without anyone noticing. I started following her on social media out of nowhere, and she didn't even know we went to the same school. We talked for a while. I even told her I was in another class and that I was interested in her, but I never explained how I found her profile. I just said something like, "Oh, we have mutual friends." I made sure to actually have mutual friends before sending her a friend request. I remember one day, I decided, out of the blue, to tell her things about herself that I shouldn't have known because we'd never talked about them. Her address, old blogs she had, the church she attended. I started this as a way to mess with her a little, but I loved how she reacted, slightly frightened. So I kept going until she was actually a bit terrified. After that, it felt too strange to maintain any kind of friendship. I had even followed her home once before and she had noticed. At the time, it didn't seem like anything too problematic, just the kind of weird stuff that young people do. Fast forward to today, I'm older now. I have a job, live alone, and overall have a pretty stable life. But I deal with mental health issues which I didn't understand the cause or condition of until recently. I've had a few relationships, most of which didn't end well, some because of things I did, others because of things people did to me. I remember feeling a strong impulse for revenge against those who broke my heart, fantasizing about stalking them and making them feel afraid, etc. I won't go into detail about every relationship, but the person I ended up dating had serious mental health issues as well, borderline personality disorder, depression and more. She was very wealthy, so our lives were very different. She was also younger. Every now and then she would bring up the idea of opening our relationship or mention how she and her friends thought she should enjoy life more before settling down. We began a cycle of dating and breaking up. Everything started spiraling, and each time we got back together, the relationship felt more and more distorted. Eventually, we both cheated on each other, and the relationship ended for good. But for some reason, my broken mind couldn't let it go. I was so hurt by everything that had happened, and this time it was much harder to resist those impulses towards violence, stalking, and instilling fear. I seemed like a normal person at work, in the office, but in my mind, there was this voice that really wanted vengeance. At some point, it became unbearable. After work, I started hanging around places near her house, supermarkets, parks, any spot we'd gone together. I made sure that she knew that I was there or that I had been there. Doing this made me feel better, less anxious. My mind would feel at peace for a while. We never talked directly about it, nor did she confront me. Eventually, I managed to get over it and started controlling these impulses again until they disappeared. When I began treatment and started talking about all this and other issues like my lack of empathy, struggles with socialization, and mimicking emotions, I didn't really feel. I began to see just how messed up these behaviors were. Now I'm in treatment and I'm close to a diagnosis, though it's not 100% confirmed. I don't think it's helpful to share it here. If you're feeling things like this, seek help. I'm not the type of person who wants to give in to bad thoughts or impulses. I want to be a good person, despite everything. Apologies to anyone I may have hurt with my actions. Thank you for listening. I was once dragged into a violent, bloody robbery. I wasn't exactly the most popular kid in high school. I was just this average girl, not cool enough to hang out with the popular crowd, but not quirky enough to get bullied either. Honestly, if you asked most of my classmates today, they probably wouldn't even remember me. I grew up in a big city, I won't say where, but think of places like Detroit, Chicago, or Philadelphia. I grew up in a place like that. My neighborhood was this mix of faded brick buildings and concrete jungles. There was always noise, honking horns, sirens, and stuff like that. It had its own kind of charm, but sometimes it felt a little heavy, and yeah, there was definitely a fair amount of crime. Like I said, I wasn't super popular. My claim to fame was that my dad owned a junkyard with an iron shredder. It might sound a bit odd, but honestly, it was kind of fascinating. A few people wanted to come by just to watch that machine shred old washing machines and rusty bikes into tiny bits. The first time I saw it in action, I was about 10, and the noise was like thunder. I remember feeling scared watching how the metal twisted and crumpled. It was oddly beautiful in this destructive way. All the girls in school were crushing on this guy named Marco, and of course, I was too. He was a basketball star who worked out all the time. Plus, he always seemed super smart, like he had stocks figured out or something. Everyone knew he had some family problems, but he still radiated confidence. One night during a football game, he came over to talk to me. My heart literally raced. I half expected someone to pinch me to wake me up from this dream. He didn't say much though, he just said he wanted to talk to me and ask where he could find me at halftime. I said we could meet at the front entrance. At halftime, we slipped away to his car. He said he wanted to go to McDonald's. That felt so random, but I wasn't going to complain. This was my first chance to hang out with Marco, and it was starting to feel like a date. While we were driving, he suddenly pulled over and asked if he could show me something. He took out a gun. My heart dropped into my stomach. I was not ready to see that. He said, "I need you to get rid of this," and everything around me went blurry. When someone holds a gun in front of you, all rational thought vanishes. I was terrified. I didn't want to be in that situation. I couldn't really say no because he was holding a gun. My mind raced with all the things that could go wrong. It felt like the weight of the world rested on my shoulders. I didn't ask questions, I just nodded, hoping to make things better. He told me to text him later, saying, "It was nice seeing you at the game today," after I got rid of it. We went through the McDonald's drive-thru, but I didn't have any appetite. That was seriously weird. I almost felt like I was being kidnapped. In a way, I kind of was. He didn't force me to get in the car with him, but I couldn't really tell him to let me go either. In a way, it felt like I was intimidated into being in his car. He gave me the gun and dropped me off at my car in the school parking lot. We said goodbye from there. I went home and grabbed the keys to the junkyard, praying my parents wouldn't catch me. Thankfully, they were upstairs. The keys were on the fridge. It felt like I was living in some kind of bad movie. I drove to the junkyard, but then panic set in hard. What if opening the gate was too loud and someone heard me? What if an alarm went off? What if someone showed up while I was there? What if the gun got stuck in the shredder? I'd never operated that thing alone. What if I accidentally hurt myself? What if I couldn't figure out how to operate the shredder in time? What if this whole plan backfired and made everything worse? I knew this wasn't going to work out. So instead, I went back to McDonald's, ordered a large meal, and carefully slipped the gun into a bag with fries and a burger. I looked on Google Maps, found a park about 30 minutes away, and I drove there, trying to stay calm. When I got to the park, I felt strangely detached from everything around me. I tossed the McDonald's bag into a trash can. Then I sat on a bench with my heart racing while trying to think of what to say if someone asked what I was doing. If anyone had approached me that night and asked if I was okay, I would have just asked them to call an ambulance for me. I felt so guilty that I literally felt sick. I have no idea how long I spent trying to calm down, but eventually I was ready to go home. Later on, I found out Marco's sister had gotten mixed up in something truly horrific that night. She was involved in a violent robbery where she'd used a gun to threaten a store owner. The store owner had not cooperated with her and she had beaten the man's head with the gun, leaving him bloodied and dazed on the floor. Thankfully, no one was killed, but the brutality of it all felt terrifying and sad. That victim was an old man. I was caught up in something way darker than I'd ever imagined. When Marco's sister was arrested and charged, I was terrified someone would find out what I'd done and link it back to me. I felt like I was carrying around this heavy secret and I was suffocating. The thought of being questioned by the police or worse, becoming a suspect, haunted me. I saw Marco around school and made sure not to even make eye contact. Thankfully, I never heard anything more about it. When girls talk about Marco, I said just enough to pretend like everything was normal. I still visit home occasionally and have seen Marco around. He's always surrounded by friends, laughing and carefree, but we never talk. It's terrifying how easily I was intimidated into participating in something so horrific. Each time I see him, it leaves me with a chill.